Anti-Coup Lawmakers in Bolivia hold a session in the assembly defying the self-proclaimed administration of Jeanine Añez. The BRICS summit in Brasilia, President Xi Jinping says multilateralism must be defended. And after 2 days of Israeli airstrikes and 34 Palestinians killed, a ceasefire takes hold in Gaza. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, and this is From the South. We begin in Bolivia, where the lower house of the Legislative Assembly finally managed to hold a quorum session on Wednesday night. 75 members from the mass party of Evo Morales, who make up 2/3 of the House, met and condemned the coup. They called on the security forces to stop repressing the people and elected Sergio Choque as Speaker of the lower house. They also rejected the appointment of a cabinet by the self-proclaimed President Jeanine Añez.
It is shameful. With what moral right or decency are they now swearing in these fascist ministers, who do not present themselves before the Bolivian people, but before the fascist oligarchy?
A few hours earlier, the Senator Jeanine Añez named what she called her cabinet in front of senior commanders of the armed forces. She had proclaimed herself president on Tuesday before an almost empty Legislative Assembly and was handed the presidential sash by the outgoing chief of the armed forces. Yet she insists there has been no coup in Bolivia.
I want to make it clear that there is no coup d'etat in Bolivia. There is a repositioning of constitutional legality.
We successfully finished our term, convinced that our armed forces are growing and transforming themselves to be a big and strong Bolivia, sovereign and respected in the whole world.
On Wednesday afternoon, lawmakers from Evo Morales' mass party were prevented from getting into the assembly building.
We are members of parliament. We need to get into our offices and be able to hold the meetings we need to have. And we're asking the colonel here to let us in. Nothing more than that.
But when the senator and other anti-coup lawmakers did try to get in, the police used force to stop them. They were beaten and tear gas was fired. Adriana Salvatierra is the president of the Senate, which would put her first in line to succeed Evo Morales. She also presented her resignation on Sunday, but it was never accepted by the Congress.
We have been blocked access to parliament. We have been beaten. They have tear gases us. This is a clear sample of the violence that they are willing to exercise. And it is also shown that there are no guarantees for parliamentary work. This is illegal. It is an abuse and it is a coup d'etat.
Massive popular resistance took over Bolivia's streets throughout the day on Wednesday in rejection of the coup against President Morales. The popular movement is demanding respect for Bolivia's constitutional order. Social movements took to the streets between Plaza Mayor de San Francisco and Plaza Murillo in La Paz, where they condemned the self-proclaimed interim president. The police and military forces used violence to try to disperse the mobilization. Now, Wednesday's protest began with a huge cabildo or community assembly in El Alto. They said they would not allow the Senator Jeanine Añez to lead the country, and they also condemned the media for remaining silent about police repression.
Here all the people of El Alto are mobilizing to march to La Paz, because we cannot accept that a racist assumes the presidency. What's more, this lady hates our symbol, the Huipala flag, so we are united from the grassroots up. We are not being led by any political party.
We have had beatings, people arrested unjustly, even the loss of human lives. But none of the media speaks of this. The whole of the city of El Alto condemns these media for being in the pocket of the right.
Thousands then set off for the center of La Paz and Plaza Murillo, where the Legislative Assembly is located. They say the self-proclaimed president has no legitimacy and must leave. Trade unions and campesino organizations also promised to march on La Paz and hold a general strike if constitutional order is not restored.
We are holding a mass march from a city which has been a symbol of a revolution against racism. Our demand is the resignation of the scoopmonger, President Añez.
Bolivia's deposed President Evo Morales gave an exclusive interview to Telesur on the first day of his political asylum in Mexico. He condemned the action by opposition Senator Jeanine Añez when she proclaimed herself interim president of Bolivia, and he blamed the Organization of American States and the United States for promoting the coup.
Her roots are racist, anti-indigenous, but she didn't follow the Constitution. First, the resignation has to be approved by the Assembly, and that didn't happen. No, it didn't happen. Secondly, and even if they once they approved my resignation, who should then assume the president? The president of the Senate. And if they resent, then the president of the lower house. That's the line of succession. She is second vice president of the Senate, who is self-proclaimed herself president, and the United States are recognizing him. Britain has recognized him. So that's the coup comes from the United States.
Hundreds of people gathered in London against the coup in Bolivia and in support of the ousted President Evo Morales. The Friends of Bolivia organization marched on the streets of London calling for an end to the coup and for democracy in Latin America to be respected. They also held a meeting with a number of activists in the UK, journalists and members of the Labour Party.
The Labour Party has been entirely clear, Jeremy Corbyn has been entirely clear with his position that this is a coup. Evo Morales has been pushed out of office at gunpoint despite winning a democratic election, and we must stand with all progressive forces in the region to make sure that democracy, social justice and independence is respected.
We'll take a short break now. When we come back, at least 2 people have died in floods in South Africa. Details after this.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical move. Investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The 11th BRICS summit has entered its second day with more calls from member countries to strengthen ties and uphold multilateralism. President of China, Xi Jinping, said BRICS has an important role towards achieving an open and fair international trading system. He urged BRICS countries to speak out against what he called protectionist bullying and unilateral sanctions by certain countries. A summit declaration is expected to be released on Thursday afternoon after a leaders' plenary session.
Russian-Chinese ties are strong and stable. They are not subject to external influence, and they have a good potential for development.
потенциалом развития.
In the coming year, new actions have to be taken. We both have to continue our efforts to respond to the changes in the international situation.
On Wednesday, the Venezuelan embassy in Brasilia was taken over by supporters of Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaidó. Early in the day, a group of about 20 individuals jumped over the embassy walls and gathered at the embassy's entrance. In addition, it was reported that Brazilian police officers did not interfere after being made aware of the events. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza denounced this occupation and held Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro responsible for the safety of the diplomatic personnel. Social movements from Brazil gathered for hours outside the embassy and protested against the attack, eventually driving out the invaders. Shifting gears now, at least 2 people have been killed after floods in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province. Provincial authorities confirmed the 2 deaths. Hundreds of families have also been left homeless after their homes were washed away by the floods. Meanwhile, the country's weather service has issued a warning of severe showers and thunder showers in parts of the province. Schools have been ordered to be suspended and classes until the weather improves. Africa's 3rd largest airline, South African Airways, has cancelled almost all its domestic and international flights scheduled for Friday and Saturday. The move follows a decision by more than 3,000 workers to go on strike after management turned down their demand for an 8% pay rise. The workers are also demanding that the company halts its restructuring process, which will result in almost 1,000 job losses. A statement by the airline said only flights returning to the country from international destinations will be operated.
But efforts have so far been once a symbol of patriotism.
At least 5 people have been killed in the Egyptian province of Bahira after an oil pipeline caught fire. According to authorities, the fire was caused by thieves stealing oil from the pipeline. The inferno also left 15 people with serious injuries. They have all been taken to a nearby hospital.
The fire spread quickly and people were escaping chaotically. Some of them were bent in parts of their bodies. We went down to look for the bodies in the canal and we found 2.
Egypt is defending itself from strong criticisms received from diplomats in a United Nations review of its human rights record. The country has faced allegations of torture, extrajudicial killings, forced disappearances, as well as concerns of mass trials. However, the Egyptian Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, Omar Marwan, argued that Egypt has made great efforts to improve its respect for human rights. He added that the nation was not granted enough time to state its case.
The Council for Human Rights committed a violation because she asked Egypt to provide her with information on this case, and she gave Egyptian authorities 60 days to respond. We are stunned. Only a few days after she sent us this letter, she issued her statement.
Health authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have launched a second Ebola vaccine. The vaccine, which is still at experimental stage, will be administered in areas where the disease is currently absent. This is part of efforts by the authorities to prevent the disease from spreading beyond the current epicenter. The epidemic has killed more than 2,000 people since it broke out in August 2018. Ugandan authorities have ordered more than 9,000 charity organizations to stop operations until they comply with regulations. The government issued the directive after discovering that less than 3,000 charities of the 14,000 currently operating in the country have valid permits. According to authorities, the move will make sure unregistered charities are not involved in money laundering. The Interior Minister has also warned banks, hotels and others to check the status of any charities they work with. In Tunisia, women protested outside parliament against a lawmaker accused of sexual harassment. A video showing the MP Zouheir Makhlouf sitting in a car with his trousers dropped to his knees was shot last month by a pupil who shared it online alongside accusations of harassment. But Makhlouf has denied the accusation, saying he was urinating due to a medical condition. Protesters fear he will enjoy immunity from prosecution over any future allegations leveled against him.
Today, the new parliament will sit, and there is an elected representative, Mr. Macron, who was caught red-handed, who is a harasser, who harassed a young girl, a student, and that person must not remain in our democratic parliament.
For us, the constitution is very clear. The member of the parliament who has a trial in process must not acquire immunity under any circumstances.
Zimbabwe's national parks continue to suffer due to an ongoing drought as more wild animals have died because of a lack of water. More than 100 elephants have perished in the last 3 months. There are also reports of animals causing chaos as they enter human settlements in search of water. The National Parks Authority said it has tried drilling boreholes, but that the water has not been sufficient to save the animals.
These deaths are attributed to the effects of climate change as a result of shortage of water and food. Right now, where we are standing, there are about 8 carcasses. But as management, we've managed to do our own intervention to try and augment water to the natural water ponds which are around the park. But you'd find that even though we have put some boreholes to try and supply water, still they are insufficient. Looking at the number of animals, especially the elephants, which are flocking from Botswana, because we share the same population.
Coming up, a ceasefire has been implemented on the Gaza Strip. We'll delve into this and more after the break.
Discover the cultural diversity that defines a continent. The place where art and tradition are part of the same nucleus. Artistic expressions, values, real lives. Fridays, only on this world.
Welcome back. A ceasefire between Israel and the Islamic struggle movement has come into effect, ending 2 days of intense Israeli attacks on the besieged Gaza Strip. The 2 days of airstrikes have left at least 34 Palestinians dead and dozens of others injured. The dead include 8 members of one family who were killed during an attack on the home of a man who the Israeli army claim is a senior official of the Islamic struggle movement. Local residents dispute those allegations and say Rasmi Abu Malous, who was killed alongside his wife and children, was a military police officer for the Palestinian Authority.
They are children, civilians, not militants, and they have nothing to do with politics. They are innocent people, asleep, and we were shocked by 4 rockets landing on the teen house. This is not normal.
This is a war crime. You are killing innocent children sleeping at home. They were supposed to fire warning missiles, but they were bombed directly.
Hong Kong officials have called for restoration of social order after violence escalated in recent days. On Wednesday night, protesters turned more violent as they used petrol bombs and even fired arrows at police.
The Special Administrative Region government has repeated that we are determined and confident to stop the violence and unrest, and we are fully supportive of the police for their decisive enforcement of the law. The most important thing is that residents should support the government and say no to violence clearly.
The Special Administrative Region of Hong Kong has been paralyzed. Radical protests, which started 5 months ago, have kept the island in a state of chaos.
Hong Kong is in a very difficult situation right now. Citizens are being affected by violence. I wish it would all go back to peace, so we can solve this crisis in peace.
The central government condemned rioters' continued violence despite the withdrawal of an extradition bill that was their initial demand. The government also rejected British and US officials' statements about the riots.
The latest atrocities caused panic and concern among Hong Kong citizens. If the United States and the UK oppose violence and call for calm as they say they do, why haven't they condemned the attacks against common civilians? The fact that those governments don't condemn the acts of violence in Hong Kong explains their incapacity to differentiate what's right and what's wrong. And their hypocrisy, the so-called justice they are demanding exposed once again their troubled moral and their hidden motives.
The riots have also caused an economic recession in Hong Kong, not seen in the last 10 years. Also, important sectors such as retail, tourism and transport have suffered great losses.
I don't really get what the rioters want. This has become a serious issue for everyone. It's hard for me to just try to understand it. Sometimes I think the rioters have some kind of issue. They just can't live in harmony.
According to experts, the wave of violence in Hong Kong will not only leave huge marks in society, but also significant losses for China, Asia, and the international financial sector.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has slammed claims made by his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron on Turkey's actions in Syria. Speaking during his meeting with US President Donald Trump, Erdogan described Macron's remarks as unacceptable. Earlier this month, the French president said there was a lack of coordination between Europe and the United States and criticized the recent operation in Syria by Turkey, which is a NATO member. Macron claimed the alliance was experiencing brain death. The first day of public impeachment hearings for US President Donald Trump ended with more testimony claiming he violated the Constitution. Testifying before the House Intelligence Committee, top US diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, linked President Trump to a pressure campaign on Ukraine to conduct investigations that would benefit him politically. Citizens who watched the proceedings also expressed their concerns over President Trump's conduct.
Have already testified this morning have pretty much provided damning evidence that Trump has put his private interests over the interests of the nation, and that's as high a crime as you can get. He can yell no quid pro quo all he wants, but the fact is he's already admitted it, as has Mulvaney, and the proof is just piling up. These are high crimes.
For a while I wasn't, because I said he'll never get out of office, and now there's hope. And we need to clean this up, whether we're Democrat or Republicans. We need to think about America and think about what America stands for, and he doesn't stand for America.
A suicide bomber blew himself up at a police station in Indonesia, killing himself and wounding 6 others. Among the injured were 4 police officers and 2 civilians. The motive for the attack was not immediately known, but police stations have been recently targeted. In August, authorities shot and arrested a militant who attacked officers at a station in the city of Surabaya, while in June another was seriously wounded when he tried to blow himself up outside a police building on Java Island. At least 12 people, including 3 children, have been killed in Afghanistan after a car bomb exploded in North Kabul. More than 20 were left wounded when the bomb exploded near an Interior Ministry building not far from the city's airport. No one has yet claimed responsibility for the attack, and it comes barely a day after the president announced that 3 high-level Taliban leaders would be released in exchange for 2 professors who have been held captive since 2016 by the Taliban. In Slovakia, a bus crash has left at least 12 people dead, The bus collided with a truck. According to health officials, another 17 were left with serious injuries. Prime Minister Peter Pellegrini, who visited the crash site in the evening, called it one of the biggest tragedies in the country's history.
Tomorrow, I will likely call a government session for 11 a.m. to discuss the declaration of a day of mourning, because we had done it before on such occasions, during big accidents. This accident really is one of the biggest in our recent history, and this is why I think that declaring a day of mourning on Friday is an appropriate way of honoring the victims, and nobody will object. It's the least the entire nation can do to feel sorry for those families who lost their loved ones, their children, their parents, and grandparents.
Anti-government protesters in Pakistan have decided to expand their roadblocks to the entire country and not just a main highway leading to the capital. Protesters have called off a 2-week sit-in on Islamabad's main highway and embarked on what they called a Plan B protest, aimed at crippling the country's roads and ousting Prime Minister Imran Khan. The opposition accuses Prime Minister Khan's government of illegalities and being propped up by the military. However, the military denies meddling in politics, and Khan has also insisted he will not step down. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on Starsat Channel 461 in South Africa and Channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.